everyone. Peace, peace. So today we have a fascinating guest. He's a OG, long time friend of the channel, a good friend of mine, Jonathan O'Toole. Now, Jonathan, he's usually in North Dakota, but today he's coming in from Virginia. This is a screenshot of him in a movie. He has an IMDb page. We'll go into who he is. Uh, if you want to label him, he is abortionist, uh, anti-abortion activist, or anti-abortion abolitionist. That's what he calls himself. But um,
That's correct.
you also travel back and forth. You have family in East Africa, but you work in the U.S. You're currently in Virginia visiting a friend of yours, a longtime friend. Uh, Now the floor is yours,
Correct.
Jonathan. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Bach. Yes, thank you so much for graciously inviting me today. I'm really happy to be here. Actually, if you go to abortionabolitionist.com, it forwards, or even .org, they both forward to my
Oh yeah, okay.
website. There's an NGO I work with called Project C, so it'll forward to projectc.com. You'll see a lot of different articles there.
What's it called again?
Um,
Abolition?
so I am an abortion abolitionist. You could
Abortion
go to
abolition.
abortionabolitionist.com.
Abolitionist.
Yeah, because you called me, which is true. I am an abortion abolitionist, meaning I want to recriminalize abortion, also sodomy. Things, I was born in 1979, and both those things in many states of America, at least sodomy was, and is still on the books, but being kept from prosecution by Supreme Court decisions. And now, of course, that's been reversed on the abortion
You're talking
side
about
with the
the Roe v.
Supreme Court
Wade
decision in the
decision.
first Trump administration. Yeah, yeah, being reversed in what was it, 2018 or 19
Okay, yeah.
was reversed. Yeah, I forget the name of that decision, but in the past few years, the thing I've worked on the hardest is Retaliation movie, where I actually portray an abortionist. There was a time when, in my teenage years, late teenage years, and early 20s, where a lot of people in the abortion industry, because of an HBO documentary that featured me around the turn of the century, a lot of people thought I would be the next person to actually shoot and kill an abortionist or bomb an abortion clinic. I've never done anything like that. I've never committed any felony.
Mhm.
But a lot of people, and that documentary actually positioned me to be the next one. It actually got me kicked out of the U.S. Marine Corps
Oh no.
just before a few months before the September 11th attacks. I received an honorably classed discharge because I hadn't done anything wrong, but they really wanted to separate me because that documentary had debuted nationwide in America. And they cut from me saying radical things that were not illegal as a teenager
Yeah.
to footage that they had of Eric Rudolph. You may recall Eric Rudolph. He's still alive. He's in the IMAX, I think, in Colorado, or I forget where, but he was held in a cell not far from the Unabomber. But Eric Rudolph had bombed abortion clinics, and one of them had a secondary device go off. So they actually already had cameras and news cameras there in the 1990s, had already gathered at the abortion clinic to report on the first blast. So they caught a lot of footage of the second blast. It was, just truly dark genius the way he did it. So they cut from me talking in that documentary to blasts of bombs going off at abortion clinics, and it associated me with that, even though I'd never done anything like that. It was enough for the Marine Corps to say, get this guy the hell out of here.
Can
By the
I?
way, Buck, can I say the George Carlin words here?
Yeah, you could. You have absolutely free reign to say whatever you want
Okay.
on our live stream.
All right. I don't want to talk nasty, but yeah.
No, you can actually talk however you want to talk. I wanted to play this
I
one video.
appreciate that.
Jonathan has a lot of haters, and what he was just talking about was actually compiled into clips. This is a really old video of a very young Jonathan, and they call him a domestic insurgent just from having beliefs that are in tune or in line with the Bible. And this we're speaking with an actual Christian. So check this out. Let me just play this. And I'm muting my camera. I mean my mic.
Investigators say evidence places Rudolph in the bombing. They aren't sure whether others
I can hear
will
you,
be
but I can't
involved.
tell what we're playing.
It was only 6 months after the first bombing. I got a phone call. Once again, the clinic had been bombed.
Well, I can't see what you're playing. How would I know?
It's just
I guess I would. I guess I would go on the YouTube. All right, and I would turn down the volume. That's how I would do it.
It's a question
right now.
of
How do you do it?
how do you do it
In the most effective way
when
that
is the time?
encompasses the most.
Waiting for the time.
No, I won't. I'll just.
when
I know what you're
itself
playing,
is
so
appointed for you to,
that'll be all right.
to pick up the sword.
Jonathan got a hold of, earlier than we intended for this to happen, got a hold of
So we're playing some of my haters,
Right to Life. We saw images
who many years ago have put together
fairly small, which I think
a
contributed
video.
to
Man, I don't really even mind this video. That particular video has affected me a lot because people type in my name and they find it. Yeah.
What were you saying, Jonathan, about
It's all right. I can't see it as you're playing it, but I know the video that you're playing. It's
Pause right
compiled to make me look very scary, and I've sort of appreciated that because I really don't fundamentally. I see the persons in the womb of a woman, that you and I, our life didn't begin when we were born. It began in the way a lot of Asians, as I understand it, calculate from fertilization or conception. When the alleles line up together from the gametes from the father and the gametes from a mother, that's a genetically unique individual. And within Christian theology, that is underscored by our belief in the incarnation. So a lot of so-called Christians who might be a little wishy-washy on the abortion issue are essentially denying that aspect of Christianity because they believe that what was in the womb of the Virgin Mary was God, and therefore when we are in the wombs of our mothers, we are in the image of the Creator, and not 5% or 1% but fully human. And that's sort of, now have I interrupted the video? I can't see what
No,
you're
it's muted.
playing there. I didn't
It's
mean
muted.
to
You're
interject at a bad time.
no, you're
Yeah.
only your audio, only your.
Well, I wanted to, yeah, I wanted to touch on, there's a philosopher, theologian and philosopher, I think he's a Presbyterian. I'm not a Presbyterian, but I try to learn from anyone I can learn from. His name's Cornelius Van Til, and one of the, I think he was from Westminster Theological Seminary, and one of the emphases of his career, I studied under and had a dear friend who I believe studied under him. I didn't study directly under him at Westminster. I never attended there, but he's affected me a lot, and he talked about presuppositions, and people will sometimes come to an argument without laying out their fundamental presuppositions. For example, a word like God, or any word, but if I could just use like a make-believe example. Let's say we had a group of people that believed that God, something absurd, that God was Kermit the Frog, okay? And I have a conversation with them, and I'm talking about God, and I believe some version of the Abrahamic God. And they're talking about God. We could talk for hours on end, Bok, and talking circles around each other, and they think I'm meaning one thing, and I think they're meaning that I'm meaning another thing, and we haven't truly communicated because we haven't defined our terminology. So this philosopher really emphasized that when people come to talk about something, they should try hard to do their best to clarify, even if they have to agree to disagree on what the terminology is. So that in that context, when I talk about God as a Christian, I'm a Trinitarian, of course, as a traditional Christian. So that when I refer to God, yes, I am talking about the Abrahamic God, but what I'm visualizing, as it were, in my mind is someone who pre-exists everything, in contrast to the secularists or the atheists. There was Buck, have you heard of what's his name? McKenna, Terence McKenna.
Terence McKenna, yeah.
I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with. Yeah, the mushroom guy. And I believe me. Let me back up and say I'm not promoting psilocybin or DMT here, but he was also a philosopher, and he had some pithy sayings. And I think one of his most brilliant insights was, he was the guy who'd say the mushroom is an entity. I don't think he was queer or gay, but he kind of had a funny voice, and one of his most brilliant insights was, he said that I believe he was talking about the scientists or the people into scientism, the secular humanists, basically take like the Richard Dawkins, the whole spectrum from Richard Dawkins, the atheists, to the humanists, the ones who kind of put God to the side or say there is no God. They basically take the position that the universe came from nothing, that everything begins with nothing. So McKenna said, they're basically asking us, give us one free miracle, which is the sudden appearance of the universe, all the laws of space and time. Just give us one free miracle, and we'll take care of the rest. We'll explain everything else by breaking it down. So that's that worldview. And on the other side, we have the Islamic, the Christian, the Jewish, and other theistic, even pantheistic worldviews. So we can't get too in depth into this, but from my Trinitarian perspective, instead of nothing, before the material universe and this cosmos we see around us, whatever language we use to describe it, there was God, an uncreated God. And from my perspective, now we would agree on that, but and we won't belabor this point, but from my Trinitarian perspective, that God didn't have to, because you could say, well, who is this God? No, we could all agree he's the creator, but before he's created everything, who is he? And what I would say is that he has an identity without referring to any creature. Before he created one molecule or atom or an angel or a jinn or any other person, created creature or person, animate or inanimate, before there was anything material, he still had an identity, because the fundamental nature of God is incomprehensible. We can understand things about God, but no creature can comprehensively understand God in the way that, at least by analogy, Bok, you and I could communicate with a dog, or animals that, another mammal that has common sensory perceptions to us. We can pet the dog and get down, condescend to it, and get down on its level, and real communication can occur. But I can never describe to that dog internal combustion, for example. hope I'm not waxing too too philosophical here, but I could never. The dog can ride in the car with me because he trusts me and communicates with me on his level as I condescend, and that's my view of God and my interaction with him. That there are many things, the way the dog can ride in the car, there are many things that I have to trust God that he knows and that I can never comprehensively understand. And the dog can ride with me in the car because he just knows the master's magic and the car just goes. The wolf book, on the other hand, might be such a, he actually might be retarded by his high IQ, and it's a dog type IQ. So no matter how high the dog type IQ gets, it will never be able to understand internal combustion. And the wolf could be so intelligent that even if I befriend him, he could be so suspicious of the car that I could never, and maybe some wolf you could if you domesticate him enough, but it would be harder, is the point that I'm making, because he's too inquisitive and not trusting enough. Because of his high IQ, it would be harder for him to ride in the back of my pickup truck than it would for a domestic dog with a lower IQ. So that's in a nutshell the way I see my relationship with God. And the reason I do believe in the triune God is because I think the identity of God was anchored in the interrelation between those three persons. That God had an identity without appealing. Because if you say he's creator, now you're appealing to the created order. If you say he's God, you can ask of whom is he God? And now you're appealing again to a creation or something over whom he is God. But that there was a built-in, it's the best apology I can give for Trinitarian monotheism, and I thought I would lead off with that there's a built-in identity between the persons of the Godhead, and that's my not apology, but apologetic
So, Jonathan,
explanation of my
Jonathan,
belief.
you preached all
Yes.
across Africa. Now, currently you're working on an oil rig in North Dakota. So how do you reconcile those two radically different lives? Your work in Kenya, and your spiritual work there, and you've got family there. And how do you do you do a lot of traveling? What's your life like in that aspect?
Man, I really do, and I work on sometimes up to 4 or 5 different oil rigs a day. Sometimes it's the same one for weeks. I started as a fracker back in around Christmas 2010 was when I first came to North Dakota, and it's hard. It's really hard work, but I've grown to like it. I disliked it when I first came to North Dakota. It's one of the lowest populations of the 48, lower 48. I think it might be the lowest, or maybe second to Wyoming, and one of the least forested too. Yeah, I just travel. I spend about 3/4 of the year just working and living in remote places, and it's sometimes poignant, sometimes deeply grindingly, sometimes lonesome, or as Americans would say, lonely, and other times it's really wonderful. I wake up some mornings and see the hoarfrost, and mind you, I'm not saying WHORE, I'm saying HOAR, that when the fog, there's fog, and then it goes sub-zero, and it's not snow, everything's covered with ice crystals, everything but from rusty old fences to scrub brushes, and it just looks magical. And most people don't get to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and see the world, a magical alien-looking crystalline world. So there's big benefits and big drawbacks, and one of them is that I don't see my children very often. But the flip side of that is that I'm like Santa Claus. I'm a real popular guy. When I come around, I'm somebody they haven't seen in a while, and they hang on my every word.
They're
So it's difficult, but it's been a blessing too.
Nice. Hey, Jonathan, we're looking at someone named Donald Spitz. Is that who you're meeting up with right now? Donald Spitz?
Yeah, I spent yesterday with Donald Spitz, and he's a very sweet and gentle elderly man now. And minister, and I spent a part of yesterday, like several hours yesterday, most of yesterday with him, and 2 or 3 hours talking with his pastor at an old style Southern tent revival meeting, which I hadn't been to one of those since I was a child. I've been to them in Africa. They still do things like that. But it was really, really interesting. And toward the end, I don't want to, how much do I want to say? Toward the end, his pastor started to, reveal some of his Christian Zionism, as it were. And I just bit my tongue. It's so poignant at this moment, having witnessed a year and a half of concentrated genocide. The genocide was happening before October 7th.
Right.
By the way, my son, I might be giving too many details here, but my latest son was born on October 7th, and I took that as a portent. I'm not sure of what, but I'm going to tell him when he's old enough to know.
Your son's birthday was the same day as, yeah. That must be a sign, 100%.
The 1 year anniversary. Yeah, the 1 year anniversary. Sign of something, I felt like at the time. What do you think, Baco? Do you think, do you buy these people who are saying that Netanyahu knew?
No, I honestly don't think he knew. There is absolutely no way he would have,
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's also my inclination. I'm not just saying it because you said it, but
really added to his problems, and even though it extended his rule, and put his political.
Of course, he made lots of hay of it. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
But still, just the fact that it's beginning the dismantlement process for the whole Zionist entity under his watch.
Yes. Yes.
Strong man would ever greenlight that, 100%. And if he did greenlight,
to me, it's the sword. It's the sword they have fallen upon. I didn't mean to talk over you. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just saying, if at the very small chance he did greenlight something like this, it was with a metaphorical gun to his head. So, hey, Jonathan, we're looking at a Wikipedia article of Donald Spitz, and it says he has been watched by the Federal Bureau of Investigation for over 20 years. And is this because of his anti-abortion work?
What's funny is this is the most gentle person you'll meet in your life. I mean, I'll do a little impression of him now. Basically, for these 30 years, he's had the website armyofgod.com, which he just transferred to me yesterday. I can say as of this morning, it's officially in my name. It doesn't go anywhere. I still have to deal with that now, but I own. He's passed the baton to me of that, and they've portrayed him as this terrorist. He's never been in prison, never been convicted of anything, but he was the chaplain and the spiritual advisor for Paul Jennings Hill, who shot an abortionist and his bodyguard. I corresponded with him in the 1990s and early 2000s, but he was executed and Donald and I both attended his execution in Stark, Florida, at the federal penitentiary on September 3rd, 2003.
Yeah.
And that was reported. I think you can verify this if it's still online. There are multiple sources. What happened? Do you mind if I tell the story?
Please go ahead. We're looking at Paul Jennings Hill's.
All right, and yes. And I was outside the building when he was executed by lethal injection. But Donald, who I met with yesterday, was inside the building because he was his officially designated spiritual advisor. And so he was there at his side. And Paul had children, a wife and children. They were also there. I saw his coffin come out. But let me take a step back and just quickly connect this to Palestine, because I see a connection, and to the way I'll just say the resistance in Palestine, what they did on October 7th. And I agree with you. It was not just some Zionist conspiracy. My son was born on the 1 year anniversary, and I'm going to tell him that these men, instead of just surrendering, these men decided we're going to fight back, and in the process, that's how Israel fell on its own sword. The Zionist, racist apartheid state fell on its own sword by the providence of God, because these men had the courage to say, no, we're going to The way we would do in, I'm not from Texas, I'm from Arkansas, not far, but I've killed a lot of rattlesnakes in my life, Bok. And one of the ways, if you don't have a knife, I usually throw a knife at them. But one of the ways you can get a rattlesnake, if you don't have a knife or you don't have a gun, you can take a stick and just poke that rattlesnake, and that little son of a bitch will bite himself if you poke him enough. Stay back, poke him again, poke him again, poke him again, and he starts biting, and they're not very intelligent. Eventually he'll bite himself and kill himself. And
with his own venom.
so I'm using that analogy. Yeah, with his own venom. Other people have done it too. So I think that is what happened in the year of our Lord 70, when Titus and Vespasian, the Judeans, let me say, had a really, really good deal that no other province of the Roman Empire had, and they pissed all over it. Okay, they were the only province of the Roman Empire in the history of the Roman Empire that had an emperor worship exemption, because they invited the Romans, unlike the others. They weren't really conquested until AD 70. They collaborated with the Romans and invited them in to deliver them from the Greeks, because the Greeks were so horrible. So they pissed all over it. My point is that I'm drawing an analogy between AD 70. They bit off more than they could chew, and that I'm saying that these people always do that eventually. Piss everybody off, make themselves stink in front of everybody, and then their own actions are so manifestly satanic, let us say, genocidal and wicked, that the whole world, steps back in revulsion. So the way I connect this to the abortion is that I told this pastor, and the man hugged me. I don't want to talk bad about him. It's painful to me. I grew up in it. There's a passage in Shakespeare where, in A Midsummer Night's Dream, where Puck, as a side note, as he's saying something else, but it's a real point of brilliance in Shakespeare, where the little imp Puck says, "And as the heresies that men do leave are hated most, by them they did deceive," and he goes on to say something else. But he makes a good point. When you come out of out from under a lie that bit you, that really affected you, and you have that hangover from the lie, you really, really, really hate that lie. And I was poisoned by Christian Zionism in my youth. And so this pastor I talked with yesterday, he's talking about, he's going through the whole thing, and I just bit my tongue, but I'm not biting it now, because what I told him is that I did have at least the courage to tell him this. I said, "Look, I know you all hate Sharia, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Bok, or steer me if I'm going the wrong direction." I said, "I know you all hate Sharia, but step back a moment and recognize that in Arabic, Sharia basically means divine law. So whether it's the Sharia of the Prophet Muhammad, or the Sharia of the Quran, or the Sharia of the Prophet Musa, or Sharia of the Prophet Isa, of Jesus, the law of Jesus, or even the law, for example, when I go for my marriage license in Nairobi, in Kiswahili, which is sort of a bastardized Arabic, I go to Sharia house because it means law. And this is what I told the pastor. I said, "Pastor, here's the problem." Yes, here's the problem. Sharia means law, and Sharia beggars cannot be Sharia choosers. If you Christian leaders, if we won't, and I said us, if we won't fight for our, at least some good faith version, anything human is never perfect, but if we won't fight in American culture and we can't overcome the atheists, the secularists, the people who are godless and lawless, if we can't overrule them in our culture, then don't complain when our Muslim friends bring their version of Sharia because you've left a Sharia vacuum. He didn't like to hear that at all. And that's what I'm saying about, as I tell the story of Paul Hill, maybe I'll take a drink and take a breath here, but
Yeah,
as I tell
we
the story
wanted
of
to
how
move
Paul
on to
Hill
this
shot
next
the
thing. You wanted to
abortionist.
share it
Yes,
with us, Jonathan. You told me to
sure.
ask you about. I believe they're incarcerated. Free Grandpa Philip Buyno and Lorna Green, and you told me in email to show them to show the audience their website. Uh, Lorna, there's a video
Oh, if you
I
could
can
show their
see.
pictures, that would be wonderful.
I am
Yeah.
right now. I'm actually showing a mugshot of Lorna Green and free Grandpa Philip Buyno, and there's this video
Buyno,
I want to
Buyno. Just say
play.
like boy and no. Yeah.
Buyno. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
This
Only
video.
need
Let me
to
tell
get
who they
some
are. They didn't
fuel.
hurt anybody. Unlike Paul Hill, they didn't
Abuses all
shoot
that you
anybody, and they didn't
require.
harm any person.
If I said abortion isn't cruel,
May I continue? Or
you know
Hold on,
that I
hold on,
would be a
Thank you.
liar. Save those babies like that fire.
what Grandpa Philip?
Save
Well,
those
first it
babies.
was Lorna Roxanne Green. She was an engineering student
Mhm.
in Wyoming, and she was having nightmares. She was 20 years old, and not very many girls, can hack engineering school. So this is a sharp young lady. She's 20 years old, and she heard about the new abortion clinic that was opening in Casper, the only one in the region, the only one in the state of Wyoming. And it was being opened by a woman, I won't say a lady, a woman who had worked for George Tiller, the most notorious abortionist in the history of America was George Tiller. He was shot by my acquaintance, Scott Roeder, in 2009, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in there. Scott Roeder is currently in prison in Kansas for shooting George Tiller in the head. But George Tiller's
Did he kill?
right-hand woman went in the past. He was killed, yeah,
Oh, no.
shot dead with a .22 to the head in the Reformation Lutheran Church in Wichita, Kansas. Shot him dead. But Lorna didn't harm any person.
Mhm.
What happened was the right-hand woman of this abortionist was opening a, I think it's called the All Women's, but the first surgical abortion clinic in the state of Wyoming. And this girl, young engineering, and you can just see the joy and the innocence in her eyes, even in the mugshot. She was having nightmares, according to her testimony, of the innocent children being ripped limb from limb, or burned, whatever suction, whatever method they were using by these surgical abortions in this new clinic. So before it opened, she gets in her car. She didn't live in Casper. In the middle of the night, and she drives and takes pans and pours gasoline in these pans in the basement of this thing. And she wore a mask and did so much damage with the fire that she set, with no one in the building, that they were delayed by more than a year opening that clinic. And they didn't catch her for all that time. It wasn't until someone turned her in, recognized her eyes under her mask in the surveillance footage, and there was a $15,000 FBI reward that some anonymous person has collected. And then they got her, and she's in the middle of serving a 5-year prison sentence. We're trying to help her in different ways. It's a federal crime,
Okay.
Wyoming, but she's not in Wyoming. She's in a federal penitentiary. They've moved her around. You may see another interview with me. Don't listen to the address I gave them. They've moved her to West Virginia. And the correct address is at freelornagreen.com if you want to mail her. If you put money on her books, she'll probably spend it, so it won't go. Just don't. It won't go to the restitution to the clinic. That's a concern, but she could probably just buy, whatever she wants to buy from the commissary there. But you could write her or send her a postcard. So that's Lorna Green. And just to imagine a pretty little 20-year-old young lady having the internal moral courage and fortitude to say, you know what, bricks don't bleed, and I'm going to make this stop. I'm going to try at least. So even if you don't agree with what she did, this is a person who acted according to her convictions. She believed that preborn persons deserved the same defense as born persons, as I do, and as did Grandpa Philip Buyno. I have been
So what's your
indirectly in
connection
touch. The
with
author
these
of that article.
people, Jonathan? What's your connection with them? Were they in your same church, or how do you know them?
I don't know. I've never met. No, no, no.
Oh,
I've never met either of them. I know a lot of people who know Philip Buyno, but I've never met him, and I don't have any. No, they go to different. They, as far as I know, they all go to different. They both go to different churches than I do, different denominations. I believe they're both Christians, but I had no direct connection with either of them, other than I just loved them when I saw what they did. Grandpa Philip, you can see him there. He looks kind of like Papa Smurf, just a white-haired grandfather. And my friend Craig, who wrote the article, I edited that article at freelornagreen.com. Craig has been in contact with, and his grandchildren who love him and miss him and thanked us for the article. But this is just a grandfather who was partially handicapped, used a wheelchair part of the time, and like Lorna, got sick of the idea that babies were being murdered. He's from Prophetstown, Illinois, and he also had the intention. He's also charged with attempted arson. He didn't burn anything, but he wanted to. He took gas cans, and his plan was to ram his car through the door and then get out and set the place on fire.
oh wow.
But the problem was, he ran. I don't know if he ran through the door or through the window, or a wall or what. But in the process of ramming his car through the wall of the surgical abortion clinic, he damaged his door, so he couldn't get out to set it on fire, to burn it down. And so he never got to that stage of his plan. But he's also serving 5 years. He also didn't harm anyone, and he also shut down the clinic, reportedly, according to the news articles, for a year.
Oh wow.
Because of the damage done simply by ramming his car through. So these are people on two ends of the age spectrum. A young lady, and a grandfather.
Reddington in the chat says,
And
hold on, Jonathan. Reddington in the chat says, by potentially burning people, what the F? If you don't want babies being killed in the womb, then don't murder people. Seems totally hypocritical. So he's being critical of their decision to.
Sure. Well, there was nobody in those buildings at the time, so that's not an issue with either one of their cases. Now, my other one, Paul Hill, definitely killed people. But in the case of Lorna, in the case of Grandpa Philip, there's no question that no other person was harmed.
Yeah. See, there's this so much hate against your anti-LGBT activity in Africa. This is my pivoting to my next question. So you've been you witnessed a lot of things because you've been in Africa. You witnessed a lot of things Americans have.
Yes.
What's really going on there with the gay mafia, the gay agenda? I'm looking at an article by these guys called politicalresearch.org, an article written maybe 10 years ago by a Cole Park called U.S. quote, Army of God operative plasters Kenya with anti-LGBTQ posters. And then he goes on to say, Jonathan O'Toole, an American anti-choice activist based in Nakuru, Kenya, makes no secret of his opinions about Obama. I hate Obama. I hate his guts, he told me in a recent interview. I am against him. I am his
I forgot
him. And then it goes into, your Jonathan O'Toole stands in stark opposition to the president's pro-choice and pro-LGBT efforts in Kenya. O'Toole isn't alone. East Africa has proven to be fertile territory for his Christian right agenda. I don't even consider you to be someone who's on the right or left wing of any political spectrum. You're just a very passionate Christian, in my opinion. But what do you say to this, Jonathan?
I Book, I honestly can't say. I'm 46 years old. I honestly can't say that I've been able to understand what is the left-right paradigm, and so I reject it because I don't. I reject any characterization based on that because I don't understand it. I've heard the explanation that it was wings of the British Parliament, I guess, at one point, but I don't understand it, and so I reject the characterization. So what was happening at that time? Elton, at the time that article came out, I was actually in jail in Atlanta, in Fulton County, the same jail that they booked Trump through. I'm not a big Trump fan either. I guess I still prefer him to. You know, they say that every president has the magical ability to make you nostalgic for his predecessor. I don't know who said that first. But and I always feel like it couldn't possibly happen, but I always get that feeling later on. So I was actually in jail when that article that you quoted from came out for preaching at Elton John's home in Buckhead, Georgia, which is a highfalutin, gentrified suburb of Atlanta. And I spent months in that jail because I had preached to Elton John. I didn't know he was home. I actually assumed I was wrong, that he wasn't home. But he came home while I was in front of his house on the public sidewalk. And he had said in Parade magazine a few weeks before, nationwide Parade magazine carried by many newspapers around the country, that Jesus was, quote unquote, a gay man. And so an old preacher who's passed away since, with a long white beard, named Neil Horsley, famous man, he also has his Wikipedia page, was there with me, and we made a sign encouraging Elton John to repent. It quoted a scripture from the New Testament saying it's appointed to all men once to die and then the judgment, to repent for saying that our Lord Jesus Christ was, quote unquote, a gay man. And he sent his police escort out there to me. So I never saw that article that you quoted from until months later. Judge Kimberly Adams quashed the charges. I was under felony terrorism charges. That's the closest I've ever come to prison.
My goodness.
And that is a miserable jail. Yeah, a miserable jail filled with a lot of serious criminals, and I was among them. Because of the nature of the charges. So what I had been doing and what I've continued doing in Africa at that time, and those posters that they referred to, were specifically against a group called Gay to Africa, run by a white South African man called Kenneth Heber. And I used to be kind of quiet about this because Kenneth Heber for many years was trying to sue me, but he's passed away now, apparently at his own hands. But Kenneth Heber, in about 07 or 08, launched he was an upcoming, is it okay, am I going too far on a rabbit trail here?
I wanted to ask you about sorcery and witchcraft, and then we'll basically wrap it up, because we're going to hit the hour mark.
Oh, okay.
I don't see a lot of Q&As,
All right.
just a few
A lot of Q&A.
observations from Reddington, so I think we'll just end it with the sorcery and witchcraft question.
Okay. Yeah, with Kenneth Heber, he was pushing gay to Africa, all over the continent of Africa, and I resisted him, and I asked the question, was he engaging in sex tourism? And that's kind of what is going on in most of Africa that I've seen, is that it's illegal. Sodomy is still illegal, and people mock them for it, but he was covertly pushing it, and we shut him down because he couldn't answer that question that I asked. And he blamed me for it, and he killed himself. And Boca didn't want him to kill himself, but he did.
Okay,
so regarding witchcraft, shall we segue into that?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Have I alienated everybody? Nobody? Do we have anybody in the chat, or
Honestly,
are we?
It's a silent audience for now. I don't I don't have any questions.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Is there an audience though?
Yeah, people are listening, they're tuning in, but nobody's asking any questions.
Interesting.
If you guys have any questions
Huh.
for Jonathan, please go ahead. Don't be shy. Keep in mind, we also accept
Yeah.
super chats and super thanks. We also accept new memberships. Reddington, you're still here. Do you have any more questions, Reddington? Reddington says he is not for abortion, but that doesn't seem like a way to go about it, in my opinion.
Well, if you stop and think about it, it's either a human person with the right that deserves defense like you or me, or it's no big deal. Who would resist someone to remove one of their kidneys for whatever reason they choose,
Hmm.
or a medical reason, or whatever they want. So it's an issue of genocide, really, or it's nothing, and we're totally foolish if it's just a part of a woman's body. The problem with it being a part of a woman's body is it's got different DNA. If it happens to be a boy, there's a penis there within a few weeks, so that woman would not be a hermaphrodite. So you're left with, and in fact, the whole point of the placenta is to prevent her body from rejecting someone else's body, because her immune system, the placenta, prevents the immune system from attacking the child, because the child is in fact somebody else. So the child is shielded by the placenta. So we're dealing with a person there. And that's why defending a person with the least amount of necessary force might be ethical, just like it would be if you were being killed, or if I was being killed. You would have the right to defend me if I was innocent by an aggressor. But shall we segue to the issue of
Yeah.
sorcery and witchcraft? I'm sorry, I didn't realize how much time had gone by.
Yeah, we
If I've been
literally have 15 minutes.
all right. Well, the thing I wanted to say about let's start with sorcery, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on either of these, but I think I would suggest, and I would love to hear your feedback, Bok, that an example that's in our face every day of sorcery, because it sounds like something from like Dungeons and Dragons. It sounds like something from a medieval mindset. Why are we talking about sorcery? It's 2025.
Hmm.
But I would suggest that just one aspect of sorcery that we're every day seeing is our financial system, where we hand these pieces of paper and it's just because, just because, just because. Since the last little tether to something that God made, gold or silver, that those papers could be, which they originally were, exchanged for, was severed. And just the sheer habit, or tell me if I'm wrong, the sheer habit that people had inherited of exchanging those pieces of paper continued, even though that fact that you once were able to exchange them for something that actually had value um, disappeared. And yet people, being creatures of habit, I think we're named wrong, Bok. I don't think we're Homo sapiens, a man who thinks. I think we're something else. Maybe I don't know how you would say it in Greek or Latin, but man who reasons as a herd would be a better description of us. I would suggest that we redefine sorcery as a level of witchcraft that is so powerful, that's illogical, where something that is fundamentally irrational, like our monetary system,
Hmm.
and fundamentally coercive, and fundamentally more than those two, characterized by theft, is able to be imposed on people on a grand scale, in this sense, a global scale. So I would suggest that we're actually paradoxically, and maybe that's the power of it, at the time when maybe more people than ever disbelieve in sorcery, we're actually under more of it than ever before.
Well said. Because I do believe our management class are, in some cases or in some ways, wizards, whether they're knowingly aware of the magical arts, or they're just
Right.
subconsciously enchanted themselves and they're just conduits to wizardry. in the ether. Either way, there is some kind of paranormal activity going on with even a dry realm as uh, as the financial world. 100%.
it I think it works better when it is subconscious. Things like that. I think they tend to work better. I think as soon as you start analyzing it, the magic starts to, as you have taught me, the magic starts to wane. There's waxing and waning magic, and that's one of the things I've learned from Bulk Precision Channel that has really, that paradigm and that way of looking at the world in terms of waxing and waning magic. I think that's the best contribution intellectually that you've
Thank you.
given me over the past years, and I want to thank you on behalf of others too
We're
for
looking
that.
at clips of you in a Ugandan movie called Retaliation, and your acting chops, man, not bad.
Please.
We're looking at
Well,
the
thank
scene
you.
where
Please do take a look at.
you're pretty
Yeah.
bloodied up and you're tied to a chair and you're sitting in you look like you've been beaten up badly. You're sitting in a in a brick room, and a very agitated young lady is crying, looking at you, very
That young lady, she's a very tall lady, and she won. She didn't win, but she got nominated in the Uganda Film Festival last year
oh wow
for Best Actress for that film.
for
And
that
so
film. Wow.
that's a film worth looking at. Received, yeah. And the number one artist in Uganda
I think you told me this.
recorded an original soundtrack. She wrote and recorded a song for that film, and I couldn't afford to pay her. Let me tell you, that film is there are other people who contributed.
Mhm.
Some have passed away, but basically, and I want to give credit to them, Richard Ellis, the late Richard Ellis of Texas, but basically, and a few other people, but basically the majority of that effort, I bore it on my, it was my crucifix that I carried in the oil field, long months away from my family.
Wow.
And they're still showing it in Uganda, and we're hoping for a breakthrough in Nigeria. And from there, I'm working with a mayor in Cameroon right now to get a Francophone version, so it's still something in play. But please go to retaliationmovie.com. Now, before we run out of time, you can watch the movie for free, by the way, at retaliationmovie.com. There's a button for Brighteon, for Rumble, or for YouTube.
I'll link it all in the description
And you can
at
watch
the end
it
of
for
this live stream
free.
as well. So thank you for reminding me.
Okay. Can I still touch on witchcraft a little bit, Book?
Oh yeah. Go ahead. We have about 9 minutes.
I have two, and maybe you can add. All right, maybe you can add to this. I have Dr. Stephen Kimotho Karanja was the chairman and founder of the Kenya Catholic Doctors Association. Was once, excuse me, let me take a deep breath. I think I'm talking over myself. Was once a very prominent association in Kenya. It's now fallen into essentially irrelevance since his death, unfortunately. But he exposed a certain, well, I can't say it, but a certain thing that people put into their bodies that was causing the sterilization of girls. And Robert F. Kennedy, who is now our Secretary of Health and Human Services in the United States, was a good friend of Dr. Karanja, and I was Dr. Karanja's right-hand man for 2 years in Kenya. Okay, and Dr. Karanja not only opposed this particular tetanus thing back 15 years ago, which sterilized a lot of girls in Kenya where they doctored something, and it there was women who still can't have babies in Kenya because of it. And Dr. RFK Jr. Helped. You can watch his movie at infertilitythemovie.org. Or just type in "infertility the movie" into Google, and it's RFK Jr. and my friend and collaborator, the late Dr. Stephen Kimotho Karanja, and he and I worked together, and we co-wrote a presentation which is up on projectc.com. You can listen to him delivering it for the Kenya Senate about this issue of witchcraft. And one representative of the abortion industry who was there said this is possibly the most outrageous presentation ever given before the Kenyan Senate. And in a nutshell, what we said, he and I were the co-authors of this, was that there are two definitions of witchcraft. We gave the Mosaic one, or the scriptural one, and the Hippocratic one. Now, Hippocrates, we've all heard of. Who hasn't heard of the Hippocratic Oath?
Everyone knows it.
Everyone, I will do no harm is the part that most people have heard. The original Hippocratic Oath was in, I don't think it was Attic Greek, but in an ancient Greek. We're talking 300 years before the birth of, more than 300 years, almost 400 years before the birth of Jesus is the time of Hippocrates. And his writings survive, especially the Oath. It not only said, I will do no harm, it said, I will not give a woman a pessary to induce an abortion, word for word. I've got that in the Greek, I've got that in the English. I can defend it before anyone. Now, many of the modern medical associations, I would argue, around globally, worldwide, have stepped outside of the Hippocratic circle. People assume that the doctor they go to, the dentist, the physician, the surgeon, has taken some version of the Hippocratic Oath. That's a popular myth. It's very possible that either they took no such oath, nowadays in the 21st century, or they took some extremely modified. But for the better part of 2,000 years, even the Christians kept the Hippocratic Oath word for word. Even though they were Christians, they kept the part where he says, I swear before Artemis and Apollo. You would still have to say that even though you didn't believe in Artemis and Apollo. They held such respect for Hippocrates. They took it word for word in the Greek up until the lifetimes of old people who are alive today. They took it even in the Greek. So that what I'm saying is that witchcraft, from a Hippocratic definition, that circle that Hippocrates drew around his disciples, similar to the circle that the Prophet Muhammad would have drawn around the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, or that Jesus drew around the 12. He said, you're not my disciple unless you ABC. You say these things, and you don't say these other things. Anybody who has disciples. So what Hippocrates says, there might be a very skilled person who can do surgery, but tomorrow, Boke, you could, or I could get annoyed with him and I hire him to help me assassinate someone and give me poison. So today I hire him to fix a broken leg. Tomorrow I hire him to do an abortion or poison somebody or do harm. Hippocrates said, anybody outside this circle is not a Hippocratic physician. And so people would be prosecuted on that basis, either by the medical associations or by the law or by both. For most of 2,000 years, certainly in Western civilization, that's out the window. So by the definition Dr. Karanja and I gave, which no one has refuted, anyone out practicing quote-unquote medicine outside of the Hippocratic definition, if they even step outside of it for a day, deliberately, I don't mean a medical error, but I mean deliberately, consciously, you can prove that they stepped outside the Hippocratic definition, that is witchcraft. Now, there's also the use, yes, they don't have to do anything else. That's a witch doctor, okay? They could be really great at things, they could be the best in their field at any particular procedure, but they are still a witch because they have consciously violated the Hippocratic definition of Hippocratic medicine. Now, the Moses' definition would include that. If you look in the Pentateuch, we don't have
Jonathan, time. Just giving you heads up.
Yes.
We're almost coming to an hour, so we're going to wrap this up very soon.
All right.
Thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts? First, let me just ask you, how did you could you remind me how you found the Bach Precision channel? Because it's been years now that we've been friends and communicating, but I don't even remember.
The way that I found it. Now tell me, are you an Ethiopian or a Somali? Ethnically?
I'm Somali ethnically.
If you don't mind me asking, is it too personal? You're Somali. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I was just curious. I hope it's not too personal of a question, but I'm just a mutt myself. Yeah. The way I found you, I thought about that. It was that I went to Chicago when it's not this Gay to Africa guy who killed himself. This group called Toto Tours was taking a gay-only tour of Addis Ababa and the holy sites of Ethiopia. And the Muslims and the Christians of Ethiopia rose up in mass by the tens of millions and said, hell no.
Right. I kind of
And
vaguely remember.
I stood up.
Yes.
I stood up with two other friends. I'm an Orthodox Christian. I stood up with my Lutheran Christian friend, Robert, and my Roman Catholic Christian friend, Craig. And we made 3 videos. I stopped in the middle of my oil field work, held up my smartphone that I had at the time, and I said, get the hell out of Ethiopia. You know, I went viral. I think they've taken it down. Well, my whole channel is down. But then the Ethiopians put me on national radio in Ethiopia. I got contacted by the Ethiopian diaspora. And you found me in the comments section of one of those videos.
Wow.
That was how we met. Yeah.
That was like 2019, if not even earlier. Yeah, that was a while.
Something. It was before that. Yeah, it was way before that.
Well,
maybe 17.
Yeah,
maybe 17.
Maybe 2017. Yeah, time flies, man. But
so I went to I not only made that video, but I went to Chicago with an Ethiopian flag to their doorstep, and this guy came out. He was sort of the girl, you know, when you got 2 sodomites, you got one of them who sort of plays the role of a girl. Yeah. And he was that one. He was at home keeping the house, and he's like, "I'm calling the FBI. I'm calling the FBI." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just here with the Ethiopian flag."
Well. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming aboard. It's been a pleasure and an honor interviewing you. You've been a supporter of the channel, and
likewise,
you actually are, you're not like a self-promoted type. It was very like interesting seeing all this stuff said about you, and you never mentioned it to me before. The movies and documentaries you were, put in, like, even if it was negative and hate, it's because you are a notable person. So once again, thank you so much.
Well, let me say this. You're welcome. And I am a sinful man, forgiven by God by very much, and I have more room to be humble than anything else. And I'm not just saying that. I've made mistakes in my life that if it wasn't for the mercy, undeserved mercy of God, I would be in a world of hurt. So it's nothing about me. Thank you so much.
We both can, agree and end this on as a Muslim, and you as a Christian. God is indeed
yes.
And with that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.